Good morning. My name is Kyle Gargaro. I'm the editor-chief for the ACHR News. Thank you so much for coming here to this panel discussion. Yesterday we had the manufacturers on the hot seat. Today we're doing contractors and distributors, the people that really know what's going on in the industry, right? We're going to run it kind of the same way we did yesterday. If you want to go to IGSHPA.socialqa.com, you can enter a question. If you go on there and you like a question, just hit it, and then I'll have a few more likes, and it'll go up to the top, and I'll probably get asked. If you guys, anyone's still rolling with the flip phone, we are not going to judge you. We have two mics out here that you can just ask your questions, kind of the old school way. So I'm just going to throw out the first question here before questions start rolling in. A lot of talk about the tax credit elimination, obviously. Just want to throw it out to you. How does that change how you're doing your business, running your business, or maybe it's not changing it at all? Just some feedback from the ground. Yeah, go ahead.
So our target market is retiring baby boomers that are building their forever home, and they're more focused on comfort and indoor air quality. And if you focus on comfort as well as health and environmental issues, then the tax credit is not quite as much as a driving factor, because they have the savings and they have the motivation to buy quality and have predictable energy costs. So the tax credit, I don't think is going to affect us as much as it would be that somebody's just doing swap outs in small homes.
Anybody else?
I'm kind of the same situation in Florida. You know, we've got a bunch of people come to Florida to retire, you know, so we've got a lot of really high-end homes. And so that's going to kind of keep us going. But there's definitely a lot of education that's going to need to be done. You know, we've already started talking to our builders and educating them, because right away, as soon as the tax credit went away, you know, immediately we had houses going to air-cooled, and it was just simply because of our builders. So we've already converted them back to geothermal and started that education process, because, you know, immediately everybody thinks, oh, the tax credit's gone, so it's not worth it. You know, they just need to be educated, and that's what we're really looking at right now, and trying to get everybody educated so that they understand. We were selling it, you know, when there was no tax credit, you know, and power was much, much cheaper back then. So, you know, it's still there. You just got to educate them.
I'd like to add that I think I'm surprised how many people didn't even remember that there was a tax credit going on. I still have people go, oh, really? There's a tax credit? So I don't sell based upon the tax credit to contractors. I'm out there talking about the efficiencies and that it's still competitive with gas, even if, you know, I mean, in the long term scheme of things, it's going to save you a lot of money over time. So we're really just trying to sell product, and then I use the tax credit as, oh, by the way, and if it comes back this year, we'll continue to be by the way.
Right. Okay. All right, thanks, guys. I did make the cardinal sin of a moderator. Didn't introduce the panel, but I was very excited about getting the questions going, so we're going to rectify that and do that now. Danny Marshall of Energy Systems in Florida. We're going to go left to right. Mike Hadley of Coastal Geothermal in South Carolina. North Carolina. I'm sorry. Greg Beach of Geo Hydro Supply in Ohio. Dan Rao of Colorado Geothermal Heating. Brian Fowler of GeoSource Distributors in Colorado. Chris Butts of Perfect Temp Geothermal in Colorado. And Al Wallace, also Colorado. We have a lot of people at the home game this morning. Next question, what type of demographics is best for selling geothermal, and do you see that changing, or has it been changing? Just going to open it up there.
Well, I'd say historically the demographic has been high-end, more affluent consumers, but certainly rural areas, propane-dominated areas are certainly a demographic to target. And I haven't really seen that change much over the years, unfortunately. It's a challenge to sell geothermal in the more traditional price points. But here in Colorado, we see little micro markets, where that doesn't apply. Certainly up in the mountains and in some of the resort areas, that's a demographic, at least in our part of the country. So I would have to say, and no shock to anyone here, that's been the demographic. And I think trying to penetrate that lower cost market with geothermal is going to take, innovative financing, possibly, some loop leasing models, something to get that first cost down.
I think in Ohio has a little bit different demographic, because back in the 90s when I first started putting loops in, we were looking, the average unit was a 3-ton, and now it's a 4-ton, and throughout the last 5 years, it's been multiple units in homes because the people that are putting the systems in, they see the long-term benefit of geothermal, especially for their 20,000 square foot home. We're putting a lot of bigger systems in, and you might have 4 and 5 units that go into a place. So, selling a lot of pipe or selling a lot of fittings and units is something that you're not going to have as much trouble with those folks. And I think going forward, it's going to continue to be that way, but it is going to be harder. I would agree that we're going to have to go with creative financing. Definitely going to have to go with something like that to make it work.
Yeah.
I think we tend to look at geothermal equipment as a commodity, whether it's Water Furnish, Bosch, Climate Master, Enertech. It's basically the same Copeland compressor, different heat coil or whatever. And one of the clear markets we are not penetrating is light commercial or multifamily residential. And one of the things that I think affects the efficiency, especially on hydronics applications, is a boiler can only do heating, and a reversible water-to-water heat pump can do heating and cooling. On a dairy farm, you can chill the milk as a virtual ground loop as you're heating the hot water for their washdown cycles, and the COP is 8. And there's no ground loop required to do that. If you look at out in the trade show, we have a demonstration of a 10,000 square foot house and the hydronic systems for that. That's really no different than a light commercial building or a large commercial building. And when you can look at advanced designs where you can provide dual process with a heat pump, such as you're heating one side as you're cooling another side, you're air conditioning the hotel as you're heating the pool, you can start demonstrating some financial models that far exceed anything that you would see out of a standard commodity product. So looking at advanced design and proposing that to architects and engineers in seminars is a great way to pick up their business for light commercial and high-end residential projects.
All right, thanks. Starting to get the questions in from the audience. This one's gotten a lot of likes. Can the panel explain if they're 100% geothermal or are they diversified into conventional HVAC with geothermal as only a portion of the business? Maybe just everyone kind of chime in and see if you're 100% geothermal or not.
So we have always been 100% geothermal with the exception of a backup boiler for hydronics.
We're a smaller residential company. We do diversify both geothermal and light conventional systems.
Up until this year, I was 100% geothermal distributor, but have added some new products to my offering, which are more conventional air source product.
We are actually just a drilling company. It's Colorado Geothermal Drilling, but we're 100% geothermal. We don't drill anything but geothermal. We assist HVAC contractors in the design. Background is mechanical engineering, so that helps with helping a lot of HVAC contractors get on board.
And GeoHydro Supply is also 100% geothermal. We've I came out of the geothermal industry installation, so that's what we're doing now.
We're a small heat and air conditioning company in North Carolina, and we started out. Actually, probably the first unit we put in was a geothermal unit, but we've always done air source and just about anything to make a dollar. We started installing our own loops in '96 and bought our, well, actually '94. '96 we bought our first drill rig, and so we've done a lot of loop work also. But to this day, we're doing geothermal and air source, among other things.
We started geothermal in '89, doing geothermal. Originally was all air-cooled company, and now we're probably 80% geothermal, 20% air-cooled, and that's both residential and commercial. We also started doing our own drilling as well back in the late '90s, and have used a couple different types of rigs trying to find the right one. But we definitely do all our own drilling unless we get something real big, and then I'll bring in a loop or drilling company to help us out where we can get all the holes drilled.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. The next question's up is, what is your toughest hurdle in selling geo to the homeowner? You can only name one.
Oh, gosh. Where I'm from, actually, air source heat pumps work very well. So, and we have very little bit of gas or oil. I'm coastal North Carolina. So my real big competition is the fact that air source heat pumps work pretty well. But geothermal, what we've always sold on geothermal is comfort and you know, there's no noise, there's no outside unit, especially along you know, the beaches and stuff. We've got units that are 20 years old inside of houses there on the beach where most of the time you get maybe 4 or 5 years out of a condensing unit. So, but getting back to our worst hurdle, it would be air source heat pumps in my area. But we've always managed to get some customers. But I think what everybody's been saying, what we're going to really have to start doing is creative financing and start selling a monthly payment like the auto industry has done and the solar industry has done. And I think it'll make sales down to those 3-ton units a lot easier.
I would say for us, the biggest hurdle has always been that initial upfront cost and overcoming that cost and trying to show the homeowners the return on investment, if you will, and how to, with the price of gas being where it is, sometimes that's hard to get that at the right point, but with the right, somebody hit on it earlier, you know, educating the customer on what exactly the return on investment is going to be is very helpful, especially in the smaller residential homes when you're competing with that.
So this might upset some professionals, but it's a win-win situation when you overcome the obstacle. And that's our greatest challenge as builders, architects, and engineers that tell our clients who have already done the research on the internet that geothermal is good, that you can't do it in Colorado, you can't do it here, or whatever. We have a project in Willow, Alaska, and we have a project in Southwest Texas, and I think most climate zones sit somewhere between that, so geothermal does work. But at a recent LEED Platinum conference for a building downtown Denver, the lead person, the consultant, was saying that geothermal doesn't work in Denver, and that's why they didn't consider using it for this LEED Platinum building. To overcome that, what we've done is we've started doing not lunch and learns where you just go into one architecture firm, but offering to pay $50 a meal and inviting architects, engineers, building officials, and contractors to a high-end hotel or something and having a free lunch. And they have to sit there for 2 hours and listen to our pitch. And after you do that, a lot of them come back around. And the good news is if you pick up one of those design professionals, you pretty much pick up all their projects moving forward as the consultant to work with them.
I think just thinking through maybe a little different answer to this is I think the biggest hurdle is myself, because I had come through the geothermal industry where I was an order taker. So people would call and say, I want a geo. Okay, we can do it. And now I have to actually sell. So that's the biggest hurdle for me, is just learning how to just be a good salesman, building relationships, continuing to follow up with customers, making those phone calls when they expect it and not letting them hang, because I think that's the biggest loss for me, is when I just don't follow up well with customers.
Okay, great. We have a question from the audience here.
Thank you for being on the panel, and thanks for your good information. I would imagine that you all have done successful hydronic heating. I wonder if you have done any successful hydronic cooling, and could you tell us a little bit about that? And in particular, how did you take care of the dehumidification? Thank you.
I promise I did not pay him to make that question. So we're Energy Environmental Corporation. We actually have the U.S. patent on radiant floor cooling and radiant floor cooling controls and passive radiant cooling or heating with passive ground loop fluids. It's in the booth out there. The biggest issue is most people think radiant cooling runs as just a hydronic system alone, and that is a misnomer. You can never do radiant cooling unless you also have a supplementary air system, even though that air system is fairly small. So if you look at radiant cooling heat extraction based on the floor covering, and we have a presentation at 2 o'clock this afternoon where we're talking detail about that, but if you have carpet, you can only remove 8 BTUs per square foot. Well, when you're in Southwest Georgia and you have 20 BTUs per square foot you have to remove, you got to pick up the difference with a 12 BTU air cooling system. The way you control dew point, there's 3 methods. One is you want to have continuous circulation in the building, and any state-of-the-art ECM fan can do 300 CFM at 38 watts. So it's a couple Christmas tree light bulbs, and you get continuous circulation and filtration. But more importantly, you have sensing at the air unit of the humidity in the space. The second thing you can do, I don't know, I understand Water Furnace has an AXB board, which is an advanced control board, which will report the humidity in the system. So it'll trigger a relay at 50% indoor humidity. So if you're at 50% or below on indoor air quality, then your dew point's going to be at 55 degrees, so you can circulate 58-degree water in the floor, and you will never hit any condensation. The third issue you need to do is make sure you control the water supply temperature. So if one of those 2 systems wasn't working correctly, you need something that senses the dew point on the pipe that supplies water to the floor. That's a relay that automatically shuts down when you're approaching dew point. So if you have a small air system, you can usually fit it between floor joists or in attic joists. You don't need big knocked out duct spaces, and architects love that. But you need to make sure that the humidity is between 40 and 50% in the building. Now in Southwest Texas, the outdoor humidity is 80%. But in a tight home, you will have 40 to 50% in the building if you have the right kind of controls on your heat pump equipment. And heat pumps are really good at controlling that. So the indoor humidity is what counts. If you're below 40%, you're going to have severe problems with allergies and dry eyes and all kinds of issues like that. According to National Jewish, if you're over 55%, you're going to have problems with mold, mildew, and stuff like that. So your customer really needs 40 to 50% relative humidity inside the space, and that's 58-degree water supply, and you will not hit condensation.
I would just add to that, based on my own experience here in Colorado, there are a limited number of radiant cooling projects that I'm aware of that several of my customers have installed them. We're kind of fortunate here in this part of the country where it's dry. The dew points are typically pretty low most of the year. Sometimes we get what's called our monsoon season, typically in August, where we'll have higher dew points and lower temperatures, which is challenging for radiant cooling. But to basically what Al said, I wouldn't recommend trying it without having a supplemental air system to handle, one, dehumidification, because that's critical, and then supplemental cooling for times when the floor is not going to have enough capacity. But I would say my experience with it has been mostly positive. There have been a few I'm aware of that have had problems, but it's been mostly positive.
I would add that Ray Howe and several other manufacturers, Zupener might be one of them as well, all all net zero commercial buildings, 1/3 of them will have radiant cooling in them. So you can interpret that market statistic however you want to provide those services. And also, the largest radiant cooling project in the world is the Bangkok Airport, Thailand. So you think about that humidity. In Colorado here, the largest radiant cooling project is the net zero barracks that was implemented last year. It's 500,000 square feet, and it's a radiant cooling application for special operations forces, and it works phenomenally well.
Alrighty, great question. We have another one in the audience.
Yeah. Garen Eubank, president of the Expo Board. My question to you contractors is, if we were at Expo were to develop a drop-in course where we could send an expert to help you set up your new sales program using third-party financing, teach your employees how to use and do that, is that something you would use? Is it needed?
I think it's something that would be useful in a retrofit market where we're trying to go in and convert people over to geothermal or change out on existing homes. That's something that our company could benefit from for sure, and that sales training.
Yeah, that's part of the creative financing that I was talking about a few minutes ago. That coupled with financing of the whole project, but the third party could take the cost of the loop out, which usually is, let's say, 1/3 of the cost of the whole project, and that would certainly be a beneficial aid in the sales of smaller and even larger jobs.
Alrighty. Next question here and from the audience. What would you like your vendors to do to help you grow your sales in 2017? I'm guessing they're listening. Or they're perfect.
Lower their prices.
I would say keep prices under control and innovate. We need new and innovative products. If you look at a geothermal heat pump today, it's basically the same as it was 30 years ago. So innovation and price control.
Anything else?
You're not going to answer that.
I feel like we've come a long way. Equipment's definitely a lot more efficient today than it was 30 years ago, and we've got things that we've done to make the drilling cost, bring the drilling cost down, faster drilling, things like that. That's all great, but when it comes to the equipment side, obviously price is a big thing. We keep that under control. I think that's going to be great for everybody. And I would be interested in the financing program. I've looked at a couple of them I'm not real happy with. But that's definitely something that would help in the existing change out, world. Because you're up against air cooled, and especially for me in Florida, that's the biggest hurdle. So it's definitely about price, and we keep that under control. We'll keep pushing forward with it, but financing would definitely help in the change out world. New construction with the houses that we do, they just throw that in there, on their loan. So it's definitely for change outs.
I think it's critical that distributors maintain a really high level of technical support and expertise, not just be a stockhouse with part numbers. Ironically, Brian Fowler brought me into this business in 1999 through Superior Technical Support, being on site with me, showing him how to do pipe fusion. Brian Rao actually drilled my house. It's kind of a tight community, but they're experts in what they do. And with our distributors, we're willing to pay more as long as you have expertise that helps us do our job, or you have innovative products that make things faster or easier. We're willing to pay for that innovation. And the heat pump lines that we serve is because of the tech support and the sales support. It's not because it's the lowest price. So we're a little bit different business model from what we're expecting from our vendors.
We have another audience member at the mic there.
Yeah, thank you. Roy Jones, Lubbock, Texas. I think something I hadn't heard anybody discuss really much in the last couple of days from a dealer side is service technicians. It's the cancer of our industry because we don't have enough service techs out there, and they are the first link to our customer. You talk about what's going to drive our sales next year or how we're going to increase sales. The average age of a service technician right now is like 50-something years old. Okay, we're trying to get this new millennial group in with technology, and we're trying to get them into our industry. My question, I'll get to it, but I'm trying to make a point. It's difficult. I mean, we have 140 people in our company. We have 10 service technicians, primarily for residential, light commercial. 2 that have geothermal background, and of course we're in West Texas. It's not as big a geo market as a lot of places, but when you're dealing with 1% of the market, you don't have service techs walking in the door that say, I know geothermal and I understand it. So when somebody says, what do you recommend that I put in my house? They're not going to talk about geothermal because necessarily they may not understand it. We've got a long way to go with the service side. So from IGSHPA's standpoint and in conjunction with the manufacturers, we need a whole lot of generic Geo 101, Geo 201, 301, training for these technicians. Because as you said, it's a small industry. We share technicians, we share salesmen, we share, we too. I do loops for other contractors. My question is, what are y'all doing for your service techs? Have you overcame that, or do you still have those issues? You lose your lead service tech, the main geo guy that's going out and servicing these. What do you do next?
It's a tough one. I hear this everywhere I go, how to bring new people into the industry. Any answers?
I'll tell you what I do. Fortunately for me, I started in this business very young, and so I learned the equipment very well, and I've trained most of my guys. I was very fortunate to get somebody like me. Same situation, started very young. Fortunately for us, it was water furnace equipment. And so it was really like kind of having another me out there. But what I do is I look for somebody that's really sharp at what they do, and it may not have anything to do with air conditioning. They may be looking at a change in life, wanting to do something else. Maybe they're tired of what they do, but you just know that they're really good. It may be somebody that you deal with that works on your car. Whoever it is, I've found people like that and converted them to geothermal. I call them geothermal service techs because, air cooled's easy to work on, So that's what I do. I kind of go after them, and I used to not do that because I felt I didn't want anybody stealing my people, and I'm not telling anybody to go steal somebody's people, but I've gotten very aggressive. So if somebody's out there, even if they work for another company, and I know that they're good, I'll go after them. Because if you sit there and wait for somebody to come through the front door that says, oh man, I've been doing geothermal for 5 years, it's not going to happen. So, you've got to create a geothermal service tech.
Yeah, we've got the same problem, and I would think that it may be pretty much nationwide, that working on heat pumps or heating air conditioning equipment or whatever, it's not like playing a game on a computer. That's what all the younger people want to do, is if they don't have a laptop in front of them, they don't want to do this kind of work. And another problem is the trade schools have been taken away from the high schools, and so now I see a trend in my county. They're actually building a new building for trade schools. And so it's coming back, and high school students are going to be going to that, because not every high school student needs to go to or has to go to college or even wants to go to college. And so what we really need to do as an industry, we need to push the fact of putting trade schools back into our high schools and start training high school students and make that part of their high school curriculum, just like it was when I was a kid, when I was in high school. But we do have a bad problem of shortage of everything, every facet of the heat and air conditioning industry in North Carolina. And I mean, everybody I talked to, Raleigh and Charlotte, and they all agree with the same thing. We're old, and who's going to take our place?
At the very least, get to the guidance counselors so they're not putting everyone on that 4-year college path.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, as a heat pump distributor, it's all about training as far as service techs and troubleshooting and things like that. We've got to get them trained, and my experience has been that even experienced technicians look at a geothermal unit and are intimidated by it because they don't understand the water side. So what I've done for my business is take a different approach to that, and in terms of training, and just try to reach out. What I'm doing now is basically just private classes and make it very affordable, very hands-on, small classes, and just education and teaching these technicians that are already in the field that the geothermal is not difficult. It's not really any different, with the exception of the water side, and that's easy enough to get your head around. So, but as far as the shortage of technicians, that's a major problem that I don't have an answer for. All I know is that trades have been devalued in this country, and we're paying a dear price for it now because there's such a shortage of skilled trades.
Yeah, go ahead, Al.
Yeah, the reason I'm not on a beach in the Caribbean is because of service, and I hate service. But that's why everybody goes and works for all the manufacturers. They get out of the contractor business. But there's 3 things that I thought of when you mentioned that. First, I appreciated the fact that you shared the numbers, that you have 2 geotechs out of 10 geotechs out of 140 people. We focus on certification and training, IGSHPA, factory certification. It doesn't matter whether it's opener or expander tools. We fly people to the factory and get them trained. We also take advantage of people like Brian. When there's distributors that offer training, we send all our guys there. It's worth the investment. The second thing is kind of the Marine model, is make sure your techs are cross-trained. You know, if I had 10 technicians, I might make sure that 5 of them are cross-trained. And I'll spend the money to make sure that I have 5 geotechs, just to make sure that I have some cross-training. And that includes 2 mechanical engineers that work for us. One of them was in the field one day, and he goes, I really feel like a blue-collar worker. And I said, well, look at the color of your shirt. I don't know if he thought he was going to be in the office, but it's basically, I need you to understand what you're designing and be able to work on it or whatever, even if you're not personally the person responsible for it. And the last thing is that because we don't have trade schools or apprenticeships, we actually are a big believer in internships. So you go to your local trade schools and you find somebody for $12 an hour that can internship with you in the summer. And if they end up being a good person, then you hire them the next summer after they graduate. If they don't work out, you send them on their way. But internships is a great way to get people assisting your technicians to do stuff, and also you get an idea of how to evaluate their skill set.
Those are good answers. Or we're going to pool our money and invest in cloning. Another option. All right. Now, another question that came in from the audience. Do you have customers asking about VRF systems, and how do you talk to them about the benefits Geo offers that VRF doesn't? We heard yesterday in the opening session the market share that VRF is gaining. Do you guys find yourself selling against that?
Not very often. Occasionally get questions about it, but not very often. I mean, geothermal has its advantage, and that is it heats and cools, and it does it extremely efficient at any outdoor temperature. So there's certainly advantage to the VRF, and might be applications where VRF is more suitable than geothermal, but I don't see that or hear that much about it.
Okay. I would say as a distributor in Ohio, going around to contractors, I find myself facing those who are asking, or they say, well, if we're doing this, and this is more competitive than geothermal, it's hard to convince somebody like that, and it takes a lot of repetitive visits and teaching and explaining. But if they've got it in their head that that's what they want to sell, it's hard to get that out. I do find that to be a bit of a block because they are efficient. I mean, we all know that they're not as efficient as geothermal, but I do find contractors who are air source guys, and they're like, well, you can't compete with me with these units.
We put in a few ductless mini splits here and there, bonus rooms and things like that there, but I never had a customer come up and say, look, I'm going to put a VRF system in instead of the geothermal. But I think that for the geothermal industry to compete against the VRF industry, instead of compete against them, I would join hands with them and have a geothermal VRF system. And then we'd have the best of both worlds. We can have a ducted system for the people that like ducted systems, don't want that thing hanging on the wall. But if we have, a geothermal VRF system, then we can do both. And I think that'd be the simplest thing to do, and we might capture a lot of that marketplace that they're getting.
And we have installed the loop field for a VRF system. It worked out pretty well. No issues with it. I was in Louisville, Colorado. It served an office space for an engineering firm, and they had the ductless throughout. And we brought our loop field in, hooked up variable speed pump to the system, and it acted off a delta T, so we saved energy that way as well. So it can be mated together.
Well, I agree with you, Kim, because it's done on some larger jobs, but I'm talking about smaller residential jobs. If we could get the manufacturers to start looking into that, then that's where a lot of the ductless mini split business is in residential and small commercial. So manufacturers get busy.
Interesting. All right, this one is piggybacking on an earlier question where we said the biggest obstacle was learning how to be a good salesman. The question is simply, how have you become a good salesman for geothermal? Is there a bullet point 1 through 10 plan that anyone can follow?
Go back to educating the homeowner. We do mostly residential stuff, and to be able to sell a $30,000 system when they can go out and buy a $12,000 system, you've got to convince them that they're spending their money wisely and they're going to get that money at some point back in energy savings, and they're going to be comfortable in the house. There's a number of programs to help you do that. I know all the manufacturers have a program you can go in on put in their heat load calculation, how much it costs, compare it to a conventional system, and show them on paper, kind of how much, when, at what point is it going to be 5 years down the road where they make up that cost. For a while there, we got kind of spoiled where we had the geothermal tax credits, and people just wanted geothermal. We didn't have to try very hard to sell it, but now, with the tax credits being gone, I think we're going to have to get back into just educating them and showing them those savings, and that's always been a key for my company, anyways, to get in the door and get those sales rolling, because there is a huge benefit to geothermal, but you've got to be able to show it to the homeowner.
What I have experienced over the last many years of doing geothermal, the salespeople that I see who are successful have two things, and these two things you absolutely must have in order to be successful at selling it, and that's belief and commitment. You have to believe in geothermal, and you have to be committed to it. And it really isn't much more complicated than that from what I've seen. If you can find a salesperson that has those two characteristics, they'll probably be successful.
Yeah.
I spent 20 years in sales at .coms, and a major metric is what was your quota and how did you perform against your quota. The problem that we have in our industry is nobody trusts contractors because nobody cares as a contractor because they don't think they'll see that customer again. I think the first thing you need to decide is whether you want 100% referenceable accounts or not. If you can't make that decision, then you probably need to rethink the problem. But essentially, if you say, I'm going to have 100% referenceable accounts, even though you will have problems, and there will be problems you have to solve the problem, there's no time limit on customer service. You go back there 4 years later, and there's something wrong, and it costs you $500 to fix it, you do it. The second thing is that most buyers for energy efficiencies are women. 70% of the decisions are women that make the decision. If you're selling BTUs per square foot or EER COP and talking Tim the Toolman Taylor, you're missing out on the fact that Jill's the one that's making the decision based on comfort, indoor air quality, and the utility bills every month.
About the home improvement reference, that was nice. I enjoyed that. Go ahead.
I just want to add to that. I agree with that 100%. You got to pick up on who you're talking to real quick. You know, I'm a very technical guy, and so when I realize right away that I'm dealing with somebody that's not very technical at all, I steer away from the technical stuff. But with me, it's being very passionate about what you do. You know, if you've got a salesman that, you know, maybe he put geothermal in his house and he loves it, you know, whatever the case is, maybe you need to help him put it in there. He needs to be passionate about selling. If he's very passionate when he walks in that door about what he's doing, 9 times out of 10, he's going to make that sale just because he's going to go the extra mile. I've been very successful at selling very, very expensive projects, a lot of them that I've kind of put together and designed myself. And my brother has always tried to figure out how in the world, you know, I get somebody to buy something that was really out of their price range. But that's all I can explain to you is I'm very passionate about it. And I think if you show that when you walk in the door, they're gonna want it just because you want it so bad. So that's all I want to say about that.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. So let's finish strong with an audience question here.
Finish strong. Wow,
Yeah.
No pressure. Thank you, gentlemen, for taking the time this morning to sit on the panel. One question regarding third-party loop leasing, whether it's private or public. Do you, to your business model, consider it a threat, or do you consider it more of an opportunity? And if so, why?
We're supposed to finish strong here.
I consider that to be an opportunity more than a threat. As far as the customer is concerned, they're going to see really a very long finance plan on the loop side, which I mean takes the cost of it out of the equation, and so I think we're going to see a lot more sales with that. Just because now we're going to be a whole lot more competitive with our whatever we're competing against, and you know I'm talking about from those 3-ton systems to those 300-ton systems. I think it's going to be a great benefit to the industry.
I don't see it as a threat either. I guess, you know, more work. It's no different than it was a few years ago when the tax credit was kicked in. As far as the workload, but bringing down that first cost, that's the biggest barrier that some people can't get over, and it takes a while to educate them and figure that out.
I definitely see it as an opportunity, and frankly, it's probably the only way geothermal is going to become mainstream.
I like the idea of the partnership of working with others. I mean, whether it's utilities or electric co-ops that are, you know, the large, whether it's the oil and gas industry that might want to use geothermal as their air conditioning option, or, you know, we talked a lot about that yesterday, even just providing an all-electric home when they're just selling BTUs. I just think it's a great opportunity. It's going to make geothermal mainstream. It's going to grow the industry. everybody's going to win on that, I believe.
I don't think we have much control over that as contractors. It's a regional issue. In Colorado, we have 24 REAs, and Xcel Energy. Xcel is very hostile to geothermal. And if you can use utility company leasing rates at 1 or 2% over 25, 30 years, it makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately, the one REA that was doing it with subsidized funding from the past administration is now kind of out of business in the loop field because they don't have the tax credits. So if you're talking about third-party loop leasing from a driller like Dan Rao, he's got the same cost of money that I have, so there's not much to be there. If you're talking about leasing using utility rates, that's a regulatory issue, and unfortunately in Colorado we don't have much control over that. So if your local municipality offers that, I'd take advantage of it. Like Brian and all these other people said, it's a great way if it's 1 or 2% over 30 years. People don't even see that in their costs, but unfortunately it's where you live that's going to make a difference on whether you can get that or not.
I've already seen it coming. I guess maybe because the tax credit's going away, or went away, I'm sorry. The loop leasing is already being talked about more by our power company, right in our area, and even, hour, 2 hours away. They're wanting to get involved with loop leasing and trying to bring the cost down for geothermal because they know that that's what people need to be doing, so they want to help. Fortunately, in our area, that's what's going on. I hope that happens all over the place.
One thing will happen if the utilities do get their hand in it, and they say we're going to do this whole subdivision in geothermal, and they're going to own the loop fields. The price of the loop field just got dropped about 25% because if you're going to do 300 homes and you start drilling from right here and just keep going, you're going to do it a lot cheaper than you would just going out and putting 3 loops in. So we're going to see a pretty good substantial drop in the price of the geothermal.
All righty. We always have more questions than time, but I'd like to, really say thank you to our distributors and contractors who share their knowledge. Please give them a nice round of applause, everybody. That concludes today's panel discussion. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody.